My husband was assigned to a new job in Qatar, Middle East, and our whole family moved with him. During this time, we lived in a 2-story house with a kitchen and living room on the first floor, and a master bedroom and our daughter's room on the second. We also had a small terrace offering a view of other houses across the street. Our daughter was 5 years old at the time, lively and with a bright personality who loved to play. Each day after my husband left for work, my daughter and I would go to the local park, play with a ball, and enjoy our lunches. It felt like having a picnic every day. However, ever since that night, I found myself unable to sleep. It began like any other night when I tucked my daughter into her bed and then settled into my own bed. Suddenly, I heard a strange noise coming from downstairs. What could that be? At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the noise persisted when I tried to go back to sleep. An intruder, maybe? In that moment of panic, fearing for our daughter's safety, I quickly woke my husband. We then quickly armed ourselves with the closest things we could grab and rushed to our daughter's room only to find it empty. With caution, my husband and I made our way downstairs to the first floor. To our surprise, the glass door leading to the terrace was open, and the curtain was fluttering in the wind. As I cautiously approached the glass door, something brushed against my foot. It was my daughter's favorite stuffed toy that she always held close. My heart filled with concern, and I kept calling out for my daughter as I approached the terrace. There she stood on the terrace, her gaze fixed on something. Without any movement, she kept staring at whatever had caught her attention. I followed her gaze, and apart from the usual sight of the neighboring houses and the water tank, there was nothing out of the ordinary. With a sigh of relief, I took my daughter back to her room and tucked her in. I too lay on my bed, wondering why my daughter was out there. As I tossed and turned, I heard the noise again. Did she just go downstairs again? I called out her name and went downstairs. "What are you doing back here again?" But as I looked at her face looked pale and complained that she was cold. "Let's go back inside, honey." Despite the sweltering heat typical of Qatar's climate, where temperatures often exceed 90 degrees, my daughter was shivering. I was worried that she had caught a cold and planned to visit a doctor the next morning if the symptoms persisted. The next morning, to my relief, my daughter appeared fine, so I gently asked her while eating breakfast about what happened last night. "Honey, why did you go out to the terrace in the middle of the night last night?" My daughter seemed to not remember anything, but that wasn't the only strange thing. Since that night, I could hear strange noises and the sound of my daughter's footsteps going down the stairs. Each night, I stayed awake, keeping watch over my daughter, my anxiety mounting with each passing night. It's been a few days since that night. The unforgettable night still haunts me. I felt something strange around my head. When I slowly opened my eyes, I saw a woman's face rising up and glaring at me. She stared at me for a long time and began speaking incomprehensible words.
Rombirazadi. Rombirazadi.
What is she saying? I couldn't understand her words. All I could guess was that she spoke Arabic since we live in Qatar. Then all of a sudden, my daughter rushed into my room, also uttered those same incomprehensible words. Confused and frightened, I found myself at a loss for what to do. Having experienced a series of strange and eerie events within the span of a week, my mental health eventually broke down. In an effort to ease my anxious mind, I kept myself busy cleaning and doing chores around the house. However, I eventually grew tired and fell asleep on the couch. I don't remember how much time had passed. I was awakened by a chill. I opened my eyes, only to find the same woman from the previous night standing right in front of me, staring. As she slowly approached, I noticed something peculiar. Water was dripping from her. When she tried to speak, her voice sounded muffled and distant, as if she were speaking from underwater.
Rombirazadi. Rombirazadi. Rombirazadi.
At that moment, the woman's sharp nails started to grow longer in an instant. She then pierced both of my ears with her elongated nails. The pain was excruciating. Right at that moment, I began to hear her words more clearly. But still, I didn't understand what she was saying. Then, all of a sudden, I could understand what she was saying. Go find. She now spoke in my native tongue. In sheer terror, I screamed aloud. When I opened my eyes, I was in my husband's arms. Glancing around, I realized I was lying on the terrace floor. My husband told me that I had been muttering, "Go find." I wondered, what was it that the woman wanted me to find? The next morning, my husband went outside to go to work. But he came right back in and said there were police everywhere and it's chaos out there. I wanted to see for myself, so I opened the door of our house. Indeed, there were police lines around the scene of the incident, extending from the house across the street to its adjacent area. Especially around the water tank, there were multiple layers of tape marking the scene of the incident. A few minutes later, a man who lived in the house across from ours was handcuffed and taken away by the police. The woman who was murdered was a domestic helper from the neighboring house, and it turned out that the man from across from our house had sexually assaulted her before disposing of her in the water tank. It all makes sense now. The thing that my daughter had been fixated on was the water tank where the housemaid was disposed of. The water dripping from her clothes and her muffled voice, sounding like she was speaking from underwater, were because she had been submerged in the tank all this time. The chill my daughter felt and those incomprehensible words were the woman's way of attempting to convey that she was in the water, asking us to find her and the man who killed her.